Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a place of myth and moonlight, a world of gods with animal heads and rivers that brought life to a civilization. You're going to want to get comfortable? Maybe tuck a pillow behind your head, because we're sinking into the warm, timeless sands of ancient Egypt. We'll be floating down the Nile, not on some crowded tourist boat, but in the company of mythical beings, witnessing the very beginning of everything. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're listening live, drop a comment with your location and the local time, so we can all feel connected across the world as we drift off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in an ocean of nothingness, a dark, chaotic expanse that feels both vast and incredibly empty. This isn't water as you know it, with waves and a surface. It's more like a primordial soup, an endless, swirling void without a single star or sun to guide you. This is none, the abyss of creation, for an incomprehensible stretch of time. Nothing existed but this shapeless, unthinking chaos. This concept of a watery beginning is a mainstream historical fact, echoing in creation myths across cultures, from the Mesopotamian Apsu to the Greek Okeanos. But the Egyptians took it one step further, personifying this void. It was not just an absence of something, it was a deity in its own right, a quiet, powerful force waiting for something to happen. You can almost feel its vast, patient slumber surrounding you. Then, you feel a faint stirring, a vibration from within the deep. It's a spontaneous act, a silent, unannounced decision from the very heart of none. A hill of dry land slowly begins to rise. It's the first solid thing to ever exist. The Benben Mound, and upon this mound, without warning or fanfare, the first god emerges. His name is Atum, and he is utterly, profoundly alone. He is the complete package, the sun god, the creator, the very essence of existence. But he has no one to talk to. Imagine being the most powerful being in the universe, and your first thought is probably, well, this is a little awkward. Atum looks around at the infinite nothingness and, in a moment of utter boredom or loneliness, decides to do something about it. Historians still argue whether this was an act of pure will or a response to some internal cosmic clock. But the result is the same. He takes his own, essence, if you catch my drift, and spits or sneezes out the very first gods. Yes, you heard that right. It's not some grand, divine pronouncement, it's a little bit gross and a little bit silly. He's essentially a one-man show, birthing his children all by himself. A quirky tidbit is that the Egyptian word for spit or ejaculate is a clever little play on words with the name of the goddess who would be born from this act. A linguistic joke spanning millennia. You're watching this happen from a safe distance, a silent observer in a world that is just beginning to take shape. You see Atum's power ripple through the watery chaos, and from it, two new figures materialize. The first is a man with a human body but the face of a lion, and his name is Shu. He is the god of air. The second is a woman, Tefnut, with the head of a lioness, and she is the goddess of moisture. You can feel the air filling your lungs for the first time, and a gentle mist forming around you. The world is getting its first breath, its first hint of life. The creation story of the Egyptians is a bit of a cosmic family drama from the start, isn't it? A single dad creating his kids all by himself, then promptly getting the next generation to separate so the world can properly form. It's like a divine episode of Keeping Up with the Pharaohs. You are still there, in the formless, pre-world, watching Shu and Tefnut emerge. The first breath of air and the first drop of moisture. But there's a hiccup. In the vast, dark emptiness of none, Shu and Tefnut get lost. It's a rather mundane problem for the first gods to have, isn't it? Like, oh, I was just born into existence, but now I can't find my way back to Dad. You can feel Atum's immense anxiety radiating through the void as he realizes his new creations are gone. To get them back, Atum sends his mighty eye to find them. This is a mainstream historical fact, the concept of the Eye of Ra, or Atum, being a separate, sentient entity. This eye is a powerful, independent part of the Creator, able to go where the God himself cannot. It's like a divine search party, but with infinitely more power. As the eye of Atum goes off on its journey, you feel the loneliness of the Creator God again. He is a truly solitary figure at this point, surrounded only by the swirling chaos of none. But the story doesn't dwell on his sadness for long. While his eye is gone, Shu and Tefnut return. You see them, a male and a female, air and moisture, happily united once more. Atum is so overjoyed to see his children safe that he weeps tears of happiness. And here is where a quirky or fringe tidbit comes in. Those tears, you realize, aren't just water. They fall to the primordial earth and transform, instantly becoming the very first human beings. Think about that for a second. We aren't created from clay or dust or rib bones. We are the literal tears of a lonely God, born from a moment of profound relief and joy. It's a beautifully melancholic origin story, but the family drama doesn't stop there. Once Shu and Tefnut are back, they get to work on their own family. You watch them have 2 children, a son, Geb, who becomes the god of the earth, and a daughter, Nut, who becomes the goddess of the sky. As children, they were inseparable. They loved each other so much that they were always entwined in a passionate embrace, which meant the sky and earth were one, and there was no space for anything else to exist. Imagine the entire universe being just one big cosmic cuddle puddle. It sounds cozy, but it's not a great foundation for a world. This is where the intervention of a parent becomes necessary. You see their father, Shu, the god of air, step in. His job is to separate them. This moment is a core image in Egyptian mythology and is a mainstream historical fact you see depicted on countless sarcophagi and temple walls. Shu gently but firmly lifts his daughter, Nut, the starry sky, up and away from her brother, Geb, the solid earth. You feel the space between them widening, the first real, habitable void being created. Nut's body, arched high above you, becomes the firmament, studded with stars. Geb's body, lying prone below, becomes the valleys and mountains. You stand in the newly formed space, a fresh, cool pocket of air and light. This separation is the true birth of the physical world as the Egyptians understood it. Historians still argue whether this separation was a violent act of necessity or a loving, guiding separation for the greater good of creation. Was Shu a stern parent forcing his children apart, or a wise one creating the perfect home for all life to flourish? You see Geb reaching for Nut, his arms and legs as mountains and rivers, forever longing for his sister, but she is always just beyond his reach. He is earth. She is sky. And Shu is the perpetual air between them. The cosmos is born from a breakup, and the world is built on a foundation of eternal longing. You feel the gravity of it, the weight of a constant, unfulfilled desire that underpins the very ground you stand on. This foundational act sets the stage for everything that follows, a world built on a balance that is always just a little bit out of reach. It's a reminder that even in the perfect world of the gods, there's always a little bit of cosmic melancholy. With the world now separated into earth and sky, you witness the next generation of gods come into being. Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky, may have been separated, but their love wasn't diminished. They had 5 children, each born on a different day, which is a key part of Egyptian calendrical myths. You watch as they arrive, one by one. Osiris, the firstborn, a future king, Horus the elder, not to be confused with the later Horus, who will be a sky god, Set, the chaotic red god, Isis, the great magician, and Nephthys, the gentle sister. This family is the heart of the most famous Egyptian myth cycle, the one we'll be spending a lot of time on. But before we get to their epic tale, we have to deal with the god who is literally at the center of everything, the sun god, Ra. The son of Atum is now the undisputed ruler of the cosmos. He has a very serious job, which is to sail his magnificent sunboat across the sky every single day. This is a mainstream historical fact. The daily journey of Ra's boat, known as the bark of millions of years, is a central pillar of Egyptian religion. You can see it in your mind's eye now, a grand vessel, gliding effortlessly from east to west, carrying the fiery disk of the sun. But what happens when the sun sets? As the sun dips below the horizon, You realize you're not just watching the end of a day, you're watching Ra's sunboat enter the Duat, the underworld. This is a shadowy realm filled with both incredible dangers and strange opportunities. You and the boat's crew are now sailing through the realm of the dead, a place where the sun god must be reborn each morning. The whole journey is a metaphor for death and rebirth, a cycle that governs all of existence. But the nightly passage isn't an easy cruise. In the depths of the Duat lurks a terrifying, gigantic serpent named Apep. This is a quirky or fringe tidbit. Apep isn't just a monster. He is the physical embodiment of all chaos, evil, and non-existence. His sole purpose is to destroy the sun and plunge the world back into the primordial chaos of none. Every night, he waits in the darkness to try and swallow the sunboat whole. You feel a shiver of dread as you see his massive, serpentine form coiled in the blackness, his eyes glinting with pure malice. The fate of the world rests on a nightly boat ride. No pressure. Ra's journey is not a solo mission, though the boat is crewed by an assembly of gods, all of whom have a specific job. There's the powerful Set, who stands at the prow and uses his spear to fight off the serpent. There's Thoth, who uses his magic to protect the boat. There's even Maat, the goddess of truth and cosmic order, whose very presence helps keep the chaos at bay. The boat's crew is a bit like a cosmic security team, fending off the ultimate threat to reality itself. Historians still argue whether the battle with Apep was a literal physical fight or a symbolic representation of the daily struggle against darkness and disorder. Was the serpent a physical threat, or was he a spiritual one that had to be defeated with powerful incantations and divine will? You see Ra, the central figure, old and wise, standing calmly at the helm. His light is the only thing illuminating the darkness as the sunboat moves. You can see the dead souls in the underworld, some being judged, others waiting for Ra's light to bring them a moment of warmth and hope. The journey is a high-stakes, terrifying affair, repeated every single night, and the survival of the world depends on its successful completion. You watch Set, the very god we'll come to know as the villain, performing his heroic duty, spearing the head of chaos night after night. It's a reminder that even the most complicated villains can have a heroic side, at least when the world is at stake. As you drift on, the sunboat of Ra is still traversing the dark waters of the Duat, and you are beginning to understand the immense, cyclical struggle that underpins the Egyptian cosmos. But we're going to take a small detour, because there's a different, but equally important, sun myth we need to touch on. Remember when Atum sent his eye out to find his lost children, Shu and Tefnut? Well, there's another story about that eye, a story of cosmic drama and an almost cataclysmic event. This is a mainstream historical fact. The story of the Eye of Ra and its destructive power. You see, as Ra grew older and more distant from humanity, the humans started to get a little bit, well, rebellious. They began to mock and disrespect him, forgetting their creator. Ra heard their insults from his palace in the heavens and became enraged. He was old, but he was not powerless. He decided to punish humanity for their insolence. So, he took his eye, that powerful, sentient part of himself, and he sent it down to earth to teach humanity a lesson. The eye descended with a fury you can feel in your bones, a scorching, blinding rage. When it landed, it transformed. You watch, transfixed, as the benevolent eye of the sun god morphs into something terrifying. It becomes the lioness goddess. Sekhmet. Sekhmet means the powerful one, and she lives up to her name. She is a goddess of war, pestilence, and scorching heat. Her purpose is clear, to hunt down and kill every human who dared to disrespect her father, and she does. You can almost feel the ground shake as she begins her rampage. She is a force of nature, a goddess of pure, unadulterated anger. She stalks across the land, a terrifying hunter, slaughtering humans in their thousands. The land is stained red with blood. And here's a quirky tidbit that adds a gruesome detail to the tale. Sekhmet is so consumed by her bloodlust that she begins to drink the blood of her victims. She becomes intoxicated by it, her thirst driving her to kill more and more. You might think this is an odd detail, but it speaks to the ferocity of this goddess and the lengths the gods would go to in order to punish a transgression. Ra, from his heavenly perch, watches this unfold, At first, he is pleased. The humans are getting their just desserts. But then, he realizes the horror of what he has unleashed. Sekhmet, his eye, is completely out of control. Her rage is an infinite loop, her thirst for blood insatiable. She is not just punishing the disrespectful, she is on the verge of wiping out all of humanity, including the innocent. Ra, the creator, is now faced with the possibility of becoming the destroyer, a rather ironic turn of events for the sun god who is supposed to bring life and light. So, Ra has a new problem: how to stop the unstoppable. You see him conferring with the other gods. A cosmic brainstorming session on how to subdue this bloodthirsty beast. There's no way to defeat her in battle. She is Ra's own power. After all, she is an extension of his own anger. The solution they come up with is as ingenious as it is strange. You'll learn about it in more detail later, but it involves a ruse and a whole lot of red-colored liquid. The story of Sekhmet's rampage is a powerful reminder of the Egyptian belief that the gods, while creators, were also capable of immense and terrifying destruction. Historians still argue whether this myth was an etiological story meant to explain a specific historical event, like a devastating plague, or if it was a purely symbolic myth about the dangers of unchecked divine power. Was Sekhmet's bloodlust a way for the Egyptians to rationalize the horror of a drought or a widespread illness? You see the sunboat finally emerge from the duat, the new dawn breaking, but the memory of Sekhmet's terrifying rage lingers in your mind. The sun may bring life, but its anger can bring death just as easily. The sun has now risen, and as you watch the light spread across the land, you're back on Ra's sunboat, floating across the heavenly river that is the sky. But it's not all sunshine and gentle sailing. You see the crew working hard, fending off the chaos from the previous night, preparing for the inevitable descent into the duat again. Ra's journey isn't just about bringing light, it's a cosmic battle that is fought every day and night. This cyclical struggle is a core element of Egyptian belief and is a mainstream historical fact. The day is for life and order, the night is for death and chaos. As the boat glides along, you notice the incredible attention to detail the Egyptians had for this process. They believed that Ra's boat had different names and forms throughout the day. In the morning, it was the morning boat, and in the evening, it became the evening boat. You can almost feel the shift in energy as the sun's light changes from the sharp, hopeful rays of dawn to the soft, warm hues of dusk. The sun isn't just a static object, it's a living, travelling deity with a purpose. But what about Ra himself? He's not a static figure either. You see him transform throughout the day. In the morning, he is Khepri, the beetle god, a symbol of rebirth and the dawn. A quirky tidbit is that the Egyptians observed dung beetles rolling balls of dung across the ground, and they saw this as a miniature version of Khepri rolling the sun across the sky. It's a rather charming and surprisingly relatable observation for a complex religion. They saw the sacred in the mundane, turning a common insect into a powerful symbol of creation. As the day progresses, Ra takes his most common form, that of a man with a falcon's head, and at sunset, he becomes an older, more wizened form, ready to face the dangers of the underworld. The nightly journey through the duat is a very dangerous time. As you watch from the deck, you feel the air get colder, the lights start to fade. The sunboat moves through 12 gates, one for each hour of the night. Each gate is a new trial. There are fiery rivers, lakes of liquid fire, and terrifying demons who try to stop the boat. The underworld is not a place of peace, it's a place of constant struggle. The crew of the boat, led by the steadfast Set and the wise Thoth, must use spells and battle to get through each gate. You hold your breath as they pass by monstrous creatures and through treacherous terrain. Historians still argue whether the duat was a physical place or a psychological one. Was it a literal underworld that the souls of the dead entered, or was it a metaphor for the inner spiritual journey of a person after death? The Egyptians had detailed maps of the underworld, with names for every gate and every demon. But were these maps meant to be taken literally? Or were they a guide for the soul's transition into the next life? You can feel the weight of this question as the darkness presses in. The most terrifying moment of all is the one we talked about earlier, the confrontation with Apep. You feel the serpent's malice before you even see it. It is a presence, a malevolent force that seeks to consume all. You see Set, the chaotic god, stand at the prow of the ship, ready to do battle with the embodiment of all chaos. He is the one who, despite his later role as a villain, is the constant protector of the sun. It's a complex, contradictory role that makes him one of the most interesting figures in all of Egyptian mythology. The battle is brief but fierce, a clashing of divine will against pure nihilism. The very fabric of reality seems to waver as the two forces collide. But Ra, with his crew's help, always triumphs. And as the first light of dawn appears, you feel a collective sigh of relief. The world is safe for another day. For the moment, at least, the sun is now a glowing orb in the sky, and you're gently nudged away from the vast cosmic journeys of Ra and toward a much more intimate, human drama. We're going to dive into the most famous of all Egyptian myths, the one that's part family feud, part murder mystery, and part divine romance. We are talking about the story of Osiris, Isis, and Set. You've already met these three, born from the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb. This myth is a mainstream historical fact, woven into the very fabric of Egyptian religious thought for thousands of years. It's the story of how a righteous king came to be a god of the dead, and why the pharaohs always had a strong claim to the throne. You see the four siblings living together: Osiris, the good and wise king, his faithful wife, Isis, a great sorceress, their tempestuous brother, Set, and his gentle wife, Nephthys, who is also Osiris's sister. The family dynamic is already a little messy, but it's about to get a lot messier. Osiris, as the eldest son, inherits the throne and becomes the ruler of all of Egypt. He brings order and civilization to humanity, teaching them agriculture, law, and how to build. He is a beloved king, a beacon of justice and progress, but not everyone is happy. His brother, Set, is the god of chaos, deserts, storms, and violence. He is everything Osiris is not. While Osiris is the verdant green of the Nile, Set is the barren red of the desert. He is jealous of Osiris's popularity and resentful of his rule. A quirky tidbit is that in earlier Egyptian texts, Set wasn't always a villain. He was the heroic protector of Ra on his sunboat. It's a fascinating evolution from a heroic god of chaos to a bitter, murderous sibling. This change in his character reflects a shift in Egyptian religious thought over time, with the Osiris cult gaining prominence and pushing Set into a darker, more antagonistic role. You feel the tension between the two brothers, a quiet, simmering animosity that is just waiting for the right moment to boil over. Osiris is trusting and kind, perhaps too kind. Set is cunning and full of a dark, brooding rage. The stage is set for a betrayal of epic proportions. You feel a sense of foreboding as you watch Set begin to hatch his plan, a plot so devious that it will change the course of not just this family, but the entire cosmos. The first step of his plan involves a lavish party, a banquet held in Osiris's honor. You can almost see the tables laden with food, the musicians playing, the guests laughing, but this is not a party of celebration, it's a trap. Set has crafted a magnificent wooden chest, a beautiful, intricately decorated sarcophagus. He brings it into the feast and announces a challenge. The chest is a gift for whoever can fit inside it perfectly. You can almost hear the crowd murmuring. A little puzzled by this odd game, one by one, the guests try and fail. The chest is too short, or too wide. It's a Goldilocks situation, but with a deadly purpose. You can feel the tension in the room as the guests' laughter turns to quiet whispers. They are beginning to sense that something is not right. And then, it is Osiris's turn. Because of his immense popularity and trusting nature, he is the last person to try. He steps forward confidently and lies down in the chest, and, of course, because Set has secretly had the chest crafted to Osiris's exact measurements, he fits inside perfectly. The moment he is in, the mood in the room shifts completely. The partygoers, who were just moments ago laughing, now stand in horrified silence. Set's men rush forward and slam the lid shut, nailing it closed and pouring molten lead over the seams to seal it completely. The betrayal is sudden and absolute. The joyous banquet has become a coffin. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to be a literal story or a symbolic one. Was the coffin a representation of the confinement of a ruler, or a metaphor for the temporary death of the Nile in the dry season? You are now standing in the aftermath of a divine family murder. The party guests are gone. their horror-struck faces a fading memory, and you are left with the chilling sight of the sealed coffin floating on the Nile. The great King Osiris, the bringer of order and civilization, is gone, and his body is entombed in a beautiful but deadly box. Set and his conspirators toss the coffin into the river, where it is carried by the currents, a grim passenger on the life-giving waterway. This is a mainstream historical fact, the beginning of Isis's desperate search. The news of Osiris's death and disappearance reaches his wife, the goddess Isis, and her grief is immense. You can almost feel her wail echoing across the land, a sound of pure devastation. But Isis is not a passive goddess. She is known for her immense magical power and her unwavering devotion. She is the epitome of the loving wife and the powerful sorceress. She refuses to accept that her husband is simply gone. She transforms herself, or perhaps just begins her journey, into the form of a bird. And you feel the wind beneath her wings as she embarks on a frantic, globe-spanning search for the coffin. She follows the currents of the Nile, her heart filled with a mix of sorrow and determination. The coffin has drifted far from Egypt, all the way to the coast of Phoenicia. It has come to rest in the city of Byblos, where it has become lodged in the roots of a beautiful, towering tamarisk tree. The tree grows around the coffin, a natural, living tomb. The local king, unaware of the divine mystery within, is so captivated by the tree's beauty and its lovely fragrance that he has it cut down and made into a pillar for his palace. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that this detail, the tree and the pillar, is a recurring motif in the myth, linking the death of Osiris to natural cycles of growth and decay, a reminder of how his death would later bring new life. You follow Isis to the court of Byblos. She arrives, disguised as an old woman, and befriends the queen's handmaidens. Her magical power is so great that she is able to weave a beautiful scent from her hair that permeates the palace. The queen is so impressed that she hires the old woman to be the nurse for her son. This is a clever ruse on Isis's part, a way to get close to the pillar she senses holds her husband. She nurses the prince, but with a divine touch. She tries to make him immortal by holding him over a fire each night. You can see the fear and awe on the queen's face as she watches this strange ritual. The queen, however, doesn't understand, and one night she interrupts the process, screaming in terror. This is a moment of human misunderstanding, a divine process, a recurring theme in myths. Isis reveals her true form in a flash of light. The queen, now humbled and terrified, asks for forgiveness. Isis, in turn, reveals her true purpose. She has come for the pillar that holds her husband's coffin. The king, in his awe, grants her request. You watch as Isis carefully, magically, separates the pillar from the tree, and there, at its center, is the coffin containing her beloved husband. She takes the coffin and begins her long journey back to Egypt, her heart both a little lighter and a little heavier. She has found him, but now she must face the horror of his death. Historians still argue whether the journey to Byblos was a late addition to the myth, influenced by trade routes and cultural exchange between Egypt and the Near East, or was it an original part of the myth, a way of showing that the Egyptian gods and their influence extended far beyond the Nile. The fact that a divine story involves a real city gives it a sense of historical weight and plausibility. But for now, you are on the journey back, a silent witness to a goddess carrying the remains of her king, preparing for the next, equally painful, part of the story. You are on the ship with Isis, sailing back to Egypt, the precious coffin of Osiris secured in the hold. She is filled with a new kind of dread, not of her husband being lost, but of what she will do now that she has found him. She arrives back in Egypt, and, wanting a quiet place to mourn, she takes the coffin to a hidden, secluded marshy area in the delta. There, she can grieve in private and, with her immense magical abilities, begin the process of reviving him. But this is a myth, and peace is never a lasting state. Isis leaves the coffin for a moment to go gather some herbs and magical ingredients she'll need. This is a crucial moment, a small lapse in security that will have devastating consequences, and who should come stumbling upon the coffin? None other than Set. Of course, he is hunting in the delta, a bit of an ironic happenstance, and he recognizes the coffin. He is filled with a new rage, a furious disbelief that his brother's body has been found. He is not a man to accept defeat easily, and he decides to commit an act even more malicious and final than the first. You watch in horror as Set, consumed by jealousy and hatred, takes the body of Osiris from the coffin. He doesn't just destroy it, he desecrates it. He maliciously dismembers the body, tearing it into 14 separate pieces. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the number of pieces varies in different accounts. It can be anywhere from 14 to 42, but 14 is the most common number. Why 14? Some scholars believe it represents the 14 days of the waning moon. This act is not just an act of violence, it is an act of total cosmic and physical destruction, a way of ensuring that Osiris can never be whole again. Set then scatters the pieces all over Egypt, burying them, throwing them into the Nile, and hiding them in the farthest reaches of the desert. He's trying to make sure Isis will never be able to reassemble her beloved. When Isis returns, she finds the coffin empty and the body of her husband gone. You feel her grief, but this time it is mixed with a fierce, renewed determination. Her despair turns to anger, and she knows she must begin her search all over again. But this time, it's not for a single coffin, it's for scattered body parts. This is a mainstream historical fact. The start of the Great Reassembly. She calls upon her gentle sister, Nephthys, who, despite being married to Set, is loyal to Isis. Together, they begin their long, painstaking journey. They travel the length and breadth of Egypt, a long, wearying pilgrimage. They search every marsh, every desert dune, every bank of the Nile. Each time they find a piece of Osiris, they bury it in a sacred place, marking it as a holy site. This part of the myth is believed to be the reason why so many different Egyptian cities claim to have a piece of Osiris's body, creating local cults and pilgrimage sites dedicated to the king-turned-god. You can feel the miles passing under your feet as they trudge through the sand and mud, their sorrow a tangible thing in the air. And here's where a very important figure enters the story, Anubis. The jackal-headed god of embalming and the dead, he is the son of Nephthys and Osiris, born from a brief, confusing affair, a detail that adds an extra layer of family drama to an already messy situation. Anubis, ever the silent and dutiful god, helps Isis and Nephthys in their search. He is a guide through the desolate places, helping them find the scattered pieces. You see him with his keen senses, sniffing out the parts, a faithful companion on this morbid scavenger hunt. Historians still argue whether the dismemberment of Osiris was a symbolic act representing the scattering of the fertile Nile lands during a drought, or if it was simply a narrative device to explain the rituals of embalming. Did the Egyptians believe that by reassembling the dead, they were echoing a divine act? The fact is that Isis is not just reassembling a body, she is reassembling the very idea of order and life. She is performing the first ever act of mummification, a foundational act for all Egyptian funerary rites. The long, arduous scavenger hunt is over. You watch as Isis, with the help of Nephthys and Anubis, finally finds all the scattered pieces of her husband. There are 13 pieces in all, as the final, most important piece, his phallus, was tragically swallowed by a fish in the Nile. A mainstream historical fact is that Isis, in a remarkable act of magical ingenuity, fashions a new one out of clay or gold, completing her husband's form. This detail is central to the myth, as it explains why the phallus of Osiris was often a symbol of fertility and rebirth. With all the pieces gathered, Isis and Nephthys stand over the body of Osiris, now whole again, but still dead. You feel the gravity of the moment. This is not just a personal tragedy, this is a cosmic crisis. The king is dead, and chaos reigns. So, in this secluded part of the delta, Isis prepares to perform the first ever mummification, a foundational ritual of Egyptian funerary practice. She uses her immense magical power, weaving spells and incantations. Anubis, the jackal god, assists her, wrapping the body in linen bandages, ensuring every piece is secured. You can almost hear the soft rustle of the linen as they work, a gentle, sorrowful sound. This act of embalming is not just about preserving the body, it is a magical ritual meant to restore the body's integrity and allow the soul to move on to the afterlife. It is a powerful display of Isis's love and her determination to not let death have the final say. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptian word for mummification is a bit misleading to us. The process was more about returning the dead to a state of being whole again, a kind of resurrection in itself. It was about creating a perfect, eternal body for the soul to inhabit forever. As Isis works, you feel a profound shift. Her magic, her love, her sorrow, and her determination come together. She turns into a kite, a type of bird of prey, and hovers over the body, beating her wings in a powerful magical dance. It's an act of pure, distilled magic. She breathes life back into the body of her husband, but only for a moment. This is not a full resurrection. It's just enough for her to perform one final, crucial act. You witness the most incredible part of this entire myth. Through her magic, through the brief moment of life she has restored to him, Isis conceives a child. The child will be the heir, the avenger, the one who will eventually defeat Set and reclaim the throne for order. This posthumous conception is the foundation of the divine right of the pharaohs, as the future king is a literal son of the god who once ruled Egypt. It's a miracle born of sorrow and an act of defiance against death itself. The child's name will be Horus. After this miraculous conception, Osiris's body slips back into death. But it's a new kind of death. He is no longer just a dead king. He is now the god of the underworld, a king of the dead. He has been transformed by his sacrifice and by his wife's powerful magic. He will now reign over the afterlife, a fair and just ruler. This is a crucial element of the myth, as it establishes a new kind of cosmic order, where the good are rewarded in the afterlife and the just king is not forgotten. Historians still argue whether the invention of this posthumous conception was an effort to solidify the legitimacy of the pharaohs or a way to explain how a dead god could still be a father. Was it a theological innovation meant to empower the cult of Osiris? Regardless of the reason, you feel the profound shift in the cosmos. The reign of Set and chaos has begun, but hope has been born. The stage is set for the final act of this divine drama, the long-awaited confrontation between the usurper and the rightful heir. The miraculous conception has taken place, and you now turn your attention to the child of Isis and the late Osiris. Isis, the master strategist and sorceress, knows that her son is the only one who can set things right, but she also knows that the throne is currently held by the cruel and watchful Set, who would not hesitate to kill the young heir. So, she takes her newborn son, Horus, to a hidden place, the papyrus marshes of the Delta. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of the divine child being raised in a hidden, humble location, protected from the villain, it's a common trope in many myths. From Jesus in Egypt to Moses in the reeds, you watch as Isis raises her son in secret, away from the prying eyes of the other gods. This isn't an easy life. The marshes are filled with snakes, scorpions, and other dangers, but Isis, with her incredible magic, protects him fiercely. She surrounds him with protective spells and uses her divine influence to enlist the help of other deities. You can almost see the marsh animals and plants, normally dangerous, turning gentle and benevolent in the presence of the young god and his loving mother. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some versions of the myth, Isis is helped by 7 scorpion goddesses who act as his protectors, stinging anyone who gets too close or threatens the child. As Horus grows, he is not just a boy, he is a god, and he is a god with a very specific purpose. His mother tells him the story of his father, Osiris, the great king who was murdered and betrayed. She fills him with the fire of justice and the desire for revenge. Horus is raised to be a warrior, an avenger, and a rightful heir. You feel the weight of this destiny on the young god's shoulders. His purpose is to defeat Set and restore the throne of Egypt to its rightful line. The entire cosmos, you realize, is waiting for this one boy to grow up. Meanwhile, Set, the usurper, rules Egypt with an iron fist. The land suffers under his rule, and the other gods are not happy. They see the chaos and injustice that Set brings. But Set is a formidable opponent, a god of raw, destructive power. He is the storm, the desert, the wild. The other gods are wary of challenging him directly. He is a hero in the morning, fighting off the chaos serpent Apep, and a cruel tyrant in the afternoon. This dual nature makes him a complex and terrifying figure. The long-awaited confrontation is not a single battle. It is a long, drawn-out conflict that lasts for years. Horus and Set, now grown, engage in a series of epic contests and battles. You watch them, 2 titans clashing. The battles are often brutal and violent, and the gods themselves are far from perfect. They cheat, they lie, and they use every divine trick in the book to win. This struggle is a metaphor for the eternal conflict between order and chaos, and it is a core element of the myth. Historians still argue whether the rivalry between Horus and Set represents a real historical conflict, perhaps a civil war between two parts of Egypt. The north, the delta, where Horus was raised, and the south, where Set's power was centered. Or was it a purely mythological explanation for the balance of power in the universe? The myth's enduring popularity suggests it spoke to a deeper truth for the Egyptians, a belief that good and evil, order and chaos, are in a constant state of struggle for dominance, and you, the observer, are now ready to witness the first, most brutal, and most famous of their clashes. The long, simmering rivalry between Horus and Set has finally boiled over, and you find yourself in the thick of their first major confrontation. This is not a formal battle, it's a chaotic, vicious skirmish, a manifestation of all the hatred and jealousy that has been building up for years. Horus, the rightful heir, is filled with a righteous fury, and Set, the usurper, is a god of pure, unbridled rage. You feel the clash of their divine powers, a sonic boom of cosmic energy that echoes across the land. This is a mainstream historical fact, the central conflict that defined the struggle for the throne. The battle is brutal. Horus, in his falcon form, dives at Set, who has transformed into a ferocious hippopotamus. They bite, claw, and tear at each other, their forms shifting and changing in a whirlwind of divine violence. At one point, Horus manages to pin Set down, but Set, ever the cunning trickster, breaks free. The fight rages on, moving from the sky to the earth and back again. The world itself seems to tremble with the force of their blows, and then it happens, in a moment of pure, malicious fury. Set thrusts his finger into Horus's eye and gouges it out. A moment of blinding pain for Horus, and a moment of triumphant glee for Set. He doesn't stop there. He continues his brutal assault, tearing the eye into 6 pieces and scattering them across Egypt. You feel a jolt of shock, a sense of deep injustice. This is not just a physical injury, it is a profound wound to Horus's very essence. The eye is a symbol of perception, of divine sight, and its loss is a blow to his power and his claim to the throne. But Horus is not defeated. He staggers away, blinded and in pain. And here is where a new, very important character enters the story. Thoth, the god of wisdom, knowledge, and magic. He is the arbiter of disputes, the keeper of secrets, and he will not stand for this act of violence and desecration. Thoth, in his form as an ibis-headed man, finds Horus, wounded and weeping in the desert. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some versions of the myth, Thoth doesn't just find Horus, he uses a gazelle to track him down, a small detail that adds a touch of the fantastical to an already epic tale. You watch as Thoth, with his immense magical abilities, begins the process of healing the young god. He collects the 6 scattered pieces of the eye. He finds 5 of the pieces easily, but the 6th is lost, and so he creates a new one out of pure divine energy. He magically puts the eye back together and places it back in Horus's socket. The pain subsides, and the eye, now healed and whole, is more powerful than before. It is no longer just a physical eye, it is the eye of Horus, a symbol of protection, healing, and cosmic order. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Eye of Horus, also known as the Wadjet, is one of the most famous and enduring symbols of ancient Egypt. You've seen it everywhere, on jewelry, on coffins, and on temple walls. It represents the restoration of something that was broken, a powerful symbol of overcoming adversity and returning to wholeness. Historians still argue whether the myth of the 6 pieces of the eye was a clever mythological explanation for the 6 fractions of a hecat, a unit of volume used for measuring grain. Was this myth created to make a mathematical system feel more divine, or was it a coincidence? Regardless, the eye is now a powerful talisman, a beacon of hope and healing. Horus is whole again, but the conflict is not over. The battle has shown that Set will stop at nothing to hold on to power. The gods realize that this feud cannot be settled by combat alone. It has become a matter of cosmic justice, and it must be decided by a higher authority. The stage is now set for a divine trial, a cosmic court where the fate of all of Egypt will be decided by the gods themselves. The brutal battle is over. and you find yourself in the grand assembly hall of the gods. The divine court has been convened to settle the long-running feud between Horus and Set once and for all. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of a divine tribunal to settle cosmic disputes. The gods are seated on their thrones, a jury of divine beings, each with a different opinion on who should rule Egypt. Presiding over the court is the sun god Ra, now in his role as a supreme judge. The case is laid out. Horus, the rightful heir, seeks to reclaim the throne of his murdered father, Osiris. Set, the current ruler, argues that he is a more powerful and fit king, a god of strength and storms, more capable of ruling the wild and untamed land of Egypt. The arguments go back and forth for an agonizing 80 years. Yes, you heard that right, 80 divine years. The gods can't seem to come to a consensus. Ra, for his part, is a little biased. He's an old god and he thinks Horus is too young and inexperienced. He's more inclined to favor Set, the powerful god who helps him fight Apep every night. You watch as the gods present their cases. Thoth, the god of wisdom, is on Horus's side, arguing for justice and order. The goddess Isis, of course, is a fierce advocate for her son, using her magic and her sharp wit to make her case. Set is represented by his own brash power, and he often resorts to threats and insults to get his way. He even tries to intimidate the other gods, a clear sign of his arrogant and chaotic nature. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some versions of the myth, Isis has to sneak into the divine court disguised as an old woman, as she is not a formal member of the tribunal. She uses her magical charm to convince the gods to take her son's side. The gods are in a deadlock. They can't decide who is the rightful king. The arguments are getting them nowhere, and the universe is stuck in a state of limbo. Finally, the gods decide to resort to something a little more, well, entertaining. They decide to settle the matter through a series of contests. It's a divine game show, with the fate of Egypt as the grand prize. This is a very human way to resolve a conflict, isn't it? When all else fails, just make them fight it out in a series of bizarre challenges, and the contests are indeed bizarre. They range from a race in stone boats, which Horus wins by making a boat out of wood and painting it to look like stone, much to Set's fury, to a competition to see who can stay underwater the longest, where Set cheats by transforming into a hippopotamus. There's a lot of divine trickery and cheating involved, and the gods are more often than not simply amused by the whole thing. The great, serious cosmic conflict has been reduced to a series of petty squabbles. Historians still argue whether the long duration of the divine trial, 80 years, was meant to represent a real historical period of political instability in Egypt, or was simply a narrative device to heighten the tension of the story. Was the delay a way to show that even the gods struggle with justice? It's a compelling idea. The myth of Horus and Set is so full of these small, relatable human failings, jealousy, betrayal, and indecision, that it's easy to see why it endured for so long. For now, you are a silent observer of a very long, very silly divine game show, waiting for the final, more serious act to begin. The divine game show has been going on for years, and the gods are getting nowhere. The contests are either ending in a draw or being decided by blatant cheating on Set's part. Horus, ever the honorable one, is often at a disadvantage. You can feel the frustration mounting in the divine court. The stalemate is a testament to the gods' inability to rule themselves, let alone humanity. It's a bit like a cosmic jury that just can't agree on a verdict. But Set, being the god of chaos, is not content with a simple victory. He wants to humiliate Horus and solidify his dominance in a way that is both physically and psychologically damaging. He comes up with a final, desperate ploy, one that is as grotesque as it is cunning. He challenges Horus to a sort of divine sleepover, inviting the young god to his home. This is a crucial moment, a betrayal that is even more intimate than his betrayal of Osiris. You watch as Horus, perhaps naive or simply trying to get this whole mess over with, agrees to the proposition. He goes to Set's house and they share a meal, but after the meal, as Horus sleeps, Set attempts to sexually assault him. This is a shocking and deeply uncomfortable part of the myth, but it's a mainstream historical fact found in the so-called Contendings of Horus and Set papyrus. Set's act is not just a perversion, it is a magical one. He is attempting to prove his dominance and to literally impregnate Horus with his chaotic essence. If he succeeds, He will have symbolically usurped Horus's power and rightful claim to the throne, but Horus is a god with immense power and a clever mind. He catches Set's semen in his hand before it can enter him. This detail is a quirky or fringe tidbit. As the story then gets even more bizarre, Horus takes his hand, now holding the essence of his rival, to his mother, Isis. She is, as you might imagine, absolutely furious. She cuts off her son's hand, a drastic act to prevent the magical impregnation, and throws it into the water. Then, with her immense magical abilities, she conjures a new hand for him. But that's not the end of it. Isis, ever the sorceress, has a plan for revenge. She collects some of Horus's own semen and smears it on a head of lettuce, a food that Set loves and eats every day. Unbeknownst to Set, he consumes the lettuce, and with it, Horus's divine essence. The next day, in front of the divine court, Set brags about his attempted conquest of Horus and demands that the gods proclaim him the true king. He says that he has dominated Horus, and that the evidence is now within him. Thoth, the god of knowledge, is a witness to the magical battle. He calls forth the semen from both gods. He asks Set's semen to appear from Horus, but nothing happens. Then, he asks Horus's semen to appear from Set, and to everyone's amazement, it bursts forth from Set's forehead in a golden disc. This is a moment of pure, magical justice. Set has not dominated Horus, he has, in fact, been dominated himself. His own words have backfired spectacularly. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to be a literal account of a bizarre magical act, or a symbolic story about the ultimate humiliation and subjugation of chaos by order. Was it a way of showing that even the most base and malicious acts can be turned against the perpetrator? Regardless of its symbolic meaning, you can feel the shift in the courtroom. Set's final, desperate ploy has failed, and in the most humiliating way possible, the stage is set for the final verdict. The moment of truth has arrived. Set's final, humiliating ploy has backfired, and the entire divine court is now looking at Ra, the supreme judge. The gods have seen enough. The long debate is over. The bizarre contests have concluded, and the last act of treachery has been exposed for what it was, a monumental failure. You can feel the shift in the courtroom, a collective sigh of relief and a sense of impending justice. Horus, the wronged son and rightful heir, stands tall, his powerful, now healed eye of Horus gleaming. Set, the powerful god of chaos, stands defeated, his face a mask of furious humiliation. Ra, the sun god, makes his final pronouncement. He declares that Horus is the one true king of Egypt. He is the rightful heir, the one who embodies cosmic order and justice. The decision is made, and it is absolute. The gods cheer, and the world rejoices. The long struggle between order and chaos, between the king of the verdant Nile and the lord of the barren desert, has come to an end. This is a mainstream historical fact, the conclusion of the epic Contendings of Horus and Set. The story of Horus's coronation is the mythological foundation for the pharaoh's rule. Every pharaoh from that day forward would be considered the living embodiment of Horus, a link between the divine world and the human one. But what happens to Set, the vanquished god of chaos? He is not killed, as some might expect. He is simply stripped of his power and his claim to the throne. He is not evil in the modern sense. He is a necessary force of chaos. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some versions of the myth, Set is not simply banished. Instead, he is given a new and very important job. He is tasked with protecting Ra on his nightly journey through the underworld. He stands at the prow of the sunboat and fights off the great serpent Apep, the ultimate embodiment of chaos. It's a fascinating twist, a villain turned protector, a reminder that the forces of chaos, when properly directed, can be a force for good. Horus is crowned king, and he restores order and justice to the land. He rules with wisdom and compassion, just as his father Osiris did. But before he takes his place on the throne, he performs one final, powerful act. He goes to the underworld and visits his father. You watch as Horus offers his newly restored eye, the eye of Horus, to Osiris. This act is not just a gesture of love and respect, it is a powerful magical ritual. The eye of Horus has the power of healing and resurrection, and by offering it to his father, Horus ensures that Osiris will be able to live forever as the king of the underworld. It's a beautiful moment, a silent exchange between father and son, a final act of justice and love, with Osiris now firmly established as the king of the dead, and Horus as the king of the living. The cosmos is once again in balance, the cycle is complete, and a new era has begun. The story of Horus and Set is not just a tale of good versus evil, it's a story of succession, of the struggle for power, and the triumph of order over chaos. It is the fundamental myth that explains the Egyptian view of the universe. Historians still argue whether the story of the Horus-Set conflict was meant to legitimize the rule of a specific dynasty, or whether it was an ancient theological explanation for the political divisions of Egypt. Was the myth a way to explain why the pharaoh, a living man, could claim to be a god? You feel the powerful resonance of this myth, a story that explains everything from the stars in the sky to the very foundation of the pharaoh's power. The struggle is over, for now, and a gentle sense of peace begins to settle over the land. The great cosmic drama of Horus and Set has concluded, and you now feel a gentle shift in focus, away from the grand political struggles of the gods and toward a more personal journey, your own journey. That is, we are moving from the world of the living to the world of the dead. This is a crucial transition in Egyptian belief, as they didn't see death as an end but rather as a beginning, a passage to the next stage of existence, and for that journey, you have a guide, a silent, powerful figure with the head of a jackal. His name is Anubis. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of Anubis as the god of embalming and the underworld. You feel his presence now, a calm, reassuring energy. He is the son of Osiris, though born from an affair with his sister Nephthys. This detail, a quirky or fringe tidbit, gives him a unique and important role in the mythos. He is the first to perform the mummification of his father, making him the patron god of the dead. His role is to guide the souls of the deceased from this life to the next, a sort of cosmic ferryman. He is a protector and a psychopomp, someone who leads souls through the transitional state between life and death. Anubis's most important job, however, comes later in the journey. He is the one who will lead you to the most crucial moment of your entire afterlife, the weighing of the heart. You can feel your own heart now, a steady, rhythmic beat in your chest. The Egyptians believed that the heart, not the brain, was the seat of intelligence, emotion, and memory. When you died, it was a record of your entire life, a complete and unedited autobiography of your soul. The heart was so important that it was the only organ left inside the body during the mummification process. Anubis leads you down a long, dark corridor toward a vast, silent chamber. This is the Hall of Two Truths, the place of final judgment. You feel a sudden sense of nervous anticipation. The air is still and heavy. Before you stands a great balance scale. On one side is a small vase, and Anubis gently places your heart inside it. On the other side, an equally important figure is standing by, the goddess Maat, the embodiment of truth and cosmic order. She is holding her feather of truth, a single, perfect ostrich feather, and she places it on the other side of the scale. The moment is silent. You hold your breath, and you can almost hear the soft clicking of the scale as it begins to move. The outcome of this judgment is all that matters. It doesn't matter how rich you were, or how powerful. It only matters how you lived your life. Historians still argue whether the feather of Ma'at was a literal representation of justice, or if it was a symbolic one, a metaphor for the weight of one's actions. The result of the weighing, however, was very real and very absolute. If the scale balances, if your heart is as light as the feather, you are declared worthy. You have lived a life in accordance with Ma'at, a life of truth and justice. Anubis then takes your hand and leads you to the next stage of the journey, to the idyllic field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. But if the scale tips, if your heart is heavy with wrongdoing and sin, you face a much darker fate. You watch as a monstrous creature waits patiently by the scale, ready to perform its terrible duty. Its name is Amit, the devourer of the dead, and her job is to eat the unworthy. You stand in the Hall of Two Truths, the balance scale before you. Your heart, the record of your life, is on one side, and the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of cosmic order, is on the other. The moment is silent, but you can feel the entire cosmos holding its breath. The outcome of this judgment is all that matters. It doesn't matter how rich you were or how powerful. It only matters how you lived your life. The Egyptians believed that a good life was a life lived in accordance with Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and order. To live a life of Ma'at was to live in balance with the world and with others. This is a mainstream historical fact. The central role of Ma'at in Egyptian religion and morality. The scale is a perfect representation of this belief. Your heart must be as light as a feather. Not light in the sense of being empty, but light in the sense of being free from the heavy weight of wrongdoing and sin. If the scale balances, you are declared worthy. Anubis, the ever-faithful guide, will then take your hand and lead you to the next stage of your journey, to the idyllic field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. But if the scale tips, if your heart is heavy with wrongdoing and sin, you face a much darker fate. You watch as a monstrous creature waits patiently by the scale, ready to perform its terrible duty. Its name is Amit, the devourer of the dead. And here is a quirky or fringe tidbit. Amit is a hybrid beast, a fearsome combination of the three deadliest animals in ancient Egypt, a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. She has the head of a crocodile, the mane and torso of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Her name literally means the devourer, and her job is simple and absolute, to eat the unworthy. If your heart is heavy, Amit consumes it. This act is the second death, and it means the complete and total annihilation of your soul. There is no afterlife, no paradise, no second chance. It's a terrifying final punishment, a fate worse than any physical death. The Egyptians didn't have a concept of a fiery hell. They had something much more chilling, non-existence. You watch as the scales of justice decide the fate of a soul. You feel the weight of every action, every thought, every word, being measured against the perfect balance of Ma'at. The verdict is not based on divine whim, but on a pure, objective truth. It is a system that rewards a life of justice and condemns a life of cruelty. This concept of a final judgment, a weighing of one's deeds, is a powerful one, and it is a core element of the Egyptian belief system. The very fear of Amit was likely a powerful deterrent for people to live good, moral lives. Historians still argue whether the concept of the weighing of the heart was a late addition to Egyptian religion, or if it was a core belief from the very beginning. Was it a way to democratize the afterlife, making it accessible to common people, not just pharaohs and nobles? The fact that a farmer's heart was weighed on the same scale as a king's suggests that the Egyptians believed in a universal justice, a truth that transcended social status. For now, you are a silent observer of this ultimate reckoning, grateful to have an observer's perspective, without the crushing weight of your own life on the scale. Your heart has been weighed, and the scales have balanced. You have been found worthy, and the menacing form of Amit recedes into the shadows, a threat no longer. Anubis, the faithful guide, takes your hand and leads you away from the Hall of Two Truths, away from the terrifying finality of non-existence. You feel a lightness in your being, a profound sense of peace and relief. Your reward awaits you, the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of the Aru, or field of reeds, as the ultimate destination for the worthy soul. You are walking through a beautiful landscape that feels both familiar and otherworldly. It is a perfect, idealized version of the land of the living. The soil is rich and dark. The canals are filled with clear water, and the crops are always abundant. There is no drought here, no famine, no hardship. The sun always shines, but it is never too hot. It is a land of eternal abundance and peace, a place where all of your needs are met, and you can spend eternity in blissful leisure. The field of reeds is not a place of pure idleness, though the Egyptians believed that in the afterlife you would still have to work, but it was a pleasant, effortless kind of work. You would tend to your fields, but the crops would grow with a single thought. You would sail on the canals, but the wind would always be at your back. You would have your family and friends with you, and you could spend your days in a state of eternal contentment. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians often buried small servant statues called shabtis with the dead. They believed that these statues would come to life in the afterlife and do all the hard work for you. A sort of magical, celestial labor force. The Field of Reeds is a perfect mirror image of life on Earth. But with all the problems stripped away, you are in a perfect, eternal version of the Nile Valley. You can see your family, your pets, and your favorite places. It is a deeply personal and comforting vision of paradise, a place that is not a foreign land but a perfected version of home. Historians still argue whether this idyllic vision of the afterlife was a way for the Egyptians to cope with the harsh realities of life on Earth, or if it was a genuine and deeply held belief about what awaits us. Was the Field of Reeds an aspiration or a promise? The fact is that this vision of paradise shaped their entire culture, from the way they lived to the way they died. The journey to the afterlife, however, is not a simple one. Even after passing the judgment of the heart, there are still dangers and trials. The soul must navigate a series of treacherous lakes and fiery rivers, and you have to be armed with the correct spells and knowledge to get through them. This is where the Book of the Dead comes in. It's not a single book, but a collection of spells and incantations meant to act as a travel guide for the afterlife. This is a mainstream historical fact. The purpose of the Book of the Dead. It was meant to give the deceased the magical knowledge they needed to overcome any obstacle. For now, you are in the Field of Reeds, and you can rest. You have passed the judgment. You have avoided the devourer, and you are in the Egyptian paradise. You feel the warm sun on your skin. You hear the gentle rustle of the papyrus reeds, and you know that you are home. Forever. You have reached the Field of Reeds, and a sense of profound calm washes over you. The terrifying ordeal of the Hall of Two Truths is over, and the menacing presence of Amit is a distant memory. But the gods are not done with you yet. The pantheon of Egyptian deities is vast and complex, and each one has a specific role to play in the cosmos. We've met some of the heavy hitters, Ra, Osiris, Isis, and Set, but now we're going to meet some of the other key players, the ones who had a profound impact on the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. First up is Thoth, the god of wisdom, knowledge, and magic. This is a mainstream historical fact. Thoth was a highly revered deity, often depicted with the head of an ibis or as a baboon. You can almost feel his presence now, a gentle, intellectual energy. He is the cosmic accountant, the keeper of records, and the arbiter of disputes. Thoth is the one who mediated the long and tedious trial between Horus and Set, and it was he who healed Horus's eye after Set's brutal attack. His role is to bring order to chaos, not through violence, but through intelligence and reason. He is the patron of scribes, scholars, and librarians, and the Egyptians believed he invented writing, mathematics, and medicine. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that Thoth was also considered the god of the moon, which in ancient Egypt was a symbol of measurement and the passage of time. The moon's regular cycles were seen as a physical manifestation of Thoth's orderly, rational nature. Thoth's most famous role, however, is as the keeper of divine records. You see him in the Hall of Two Truths, standing by the balance scale, diligently recording the outcome of every judgment. He is the one who decides whether a soul is worthy, and he is the one who writes down the final verdict. He is a silent, objective witness to every single life that ever was. His presence in the judgment hall is a reassurance that the system is fair, that the judgment is not based on a whim but on a complete and perfect record of one's actions. The Egyptians believed that Thoth was also the author of a great magical work, the Book of Thoth, a book of spells and incantations so powerful that it was said to contain the secret of the universe. A mainstream historical fact is that the Egyptians believed that magic, or Heka, was a powerful force, and Thoth was its ultimate master. He was the one who gave humanity the knowledge of magic, but he also warned them of its dangers. The Book of Thoth was a double-edged sword, a source of incredible power and incredible risk. Historians still argue whether Thoth's role as the moon god was an original part of his mythology, or if it was a later syncretism with other lunar deities. Was he a god of knowledge who was later associated with the moon? Or was he a moon god who was later associated with knowledge? The fact is that his dual role as a god of both wisdom and the moon made him a central figure in a religion that was deeply tied to the cycles of both the heavens and the earth. You can feel the quiet, reassuring presence of Thoth as you explore the field of reeds. A reminder that even in paradise, order and knowledge are still important. The quiet, intellectual presence of Thoth has given you a glimpse into the Egyptian appreciation for knowledge and order. But there is another goddess who embodies this concept on an even more fundamental level. Her name is Ma'at, and she is the very essence of truth, justice, and cosmic order. This is a mainstream historical fact. Ma'at was arguably the most important of all Egyptian deities, representing the moral and ethical principles by which the universe itself was governed. You saw her in the Hall of Two Truths, her single ostrich feather on the balance scale, a perfect measure of a life well lived. But Ma'at is more than just a goddess of judgment. She is the force that prevents the cosmos from collapsing back into the chaos of none. She is the reason the sun rises, the Nile floods, and the seasons change. Without Ma'at, the universe would descend into a state of Isfet, the Egyptian concept of chaos and injustice. The pharaoh's main duty was to uphold Ma'at on earth, ensuring that justice, truth, and order reigned in their kingdom. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptian word for Ma'at is a bit of a pun. It also means straight or true. A double meaning that was likely very intentional and a subtle reminder of the goddess's core principles. The ancient Egyptians believed that every person had a responsibility to act in a way that upheld Ma'at. It was a moral code, a guide for daily life. When you were kind to your neighbor, when you told the truth, when you didn't steal, you were upholding Ma'at. It wasn't just about avoiding punishment in the afterlife, it was about contributing to the balance of the cosmos in this life. Historians still argue whether the concept of Ma'at was an original religious idea, or if it was a philosophical concept that later became personified as a goddess. Was she a divine being from the very beginning, or was she a representation of a set of moral principles that were so important they had to be elevated to godhood? The Egyptians saw a clear and direct link between the actions of a person on earth and the well-being of the entire universe. If the pharaoh failed to uphold Ma'at, the Nile might not flood, and the crops might fail. If a common person lied or cheated, it could, on a micro level, contribute to the forces of chaos. The responsibility was on everyone to be a part of the grand Bidiyari cosmic order. The world of the Egyptians was not a random place. It was a place of balance and harmony. And Ma'at was the reason for it all. You feel a profound sense of peace in the field of reeds. A place where Ma'at reigns supreme. There is no injustice here, no chaos, no lies. It is a world where every action is in perfect harmony, a testament to the power of a life well lived. It is a reminder that the Egyptians, despite their complex pantheon and their bizarre myths, had a simple and beautiful core belief that truth and justice would always triumph in the end. You've now spent some time in the company of the truly cosmic, with the gods of creation and the forces of order. But the Egyptian pantheon is as much about the everyday as it is about the eternal. We're going to move from the grand, celestial players to some of the more approachable, and perhaps more relatable, deities. First up is Hathor, a goddess of immense complexity and contradiction. This is a mainstream historical fact. Hathor was one of the most popular and revered goddesses in all of ancient Egypt. She was a deity of joy, music, dance, love, and motherhood. She was often depicted as a beautiful woman with a headdress of cow horns holding a sun disk, or sometimes as a full cow. You can almost hear the soft, melodic sounds of her sistrum, a sacred rattle used in her rituals, as you feel her presence. She was the goddess who watched over women, childbirth, and all things related to joy and fertility. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some myths, she was also associated with the dead, and she was said to welcome the deceased to the afterlife with food and drink. This dual role, a goddess of life and a goddess of death, is a perfect example of her complexity. She was a motherly figure, but she could also be terrifyingly destructive. Remember the story of Ra's eye, which we discussed earlier. That eye, which transformed into the fearsome lioness Sekhmet, was also an aspect of Hathor. When Sekhmet went on her blood-soaked rampage, it was Ra's rage-filled eye of Hathor that was doing the killing. It was Hathor herself, in a different form, who was almost responsible for wiping out humanity. This transformation from the gentle, loving goddess of music and dance to a bloodthirsty destroyer, is a powerful reminder that the Egyptian gods were not simple caricatures. They contained multitudes, and they could be both creative and destructive forces. Historians still argue whether this dual nature of Hathor Sekhmet represents a theological evolution, with two different goddesses merging over time, or if it was an original concept meant to show that all life contains the seeds of both creation and destruction. Was the gentle cow goddess and the ferocious lioness two sides of the same coin? A perfect representation of the duality of the cosmos. The fact is that this duality made her a powerful and fascinating figure, a goddess that people could turn to for both joy and protection from evil. You feel a sense of warmth and comfort from her, a presence that reminds you of a loving mother, but with an underlying current of immense, powerful energy. She is the goddess of feasts and festivals, of the love between a man and a woman, and of the first cry of a newborn child. She is a goddess of both the light-hearted and the profound. She is the force that makes life worth living, but she is also the one who can, if provoked, end it all. She is a beautiful, contradictory deity, a perfect reflection of the mysteries of life itself. From the grand cosmos of Hathor, we now move to a more domestic and reassuring presence in the Egyptian pantheon. You find yourself in an ancient home, a simple mud brick dwelling, and you feel a strange but comforting energy. This is the realm of Bes, a dwarf god who was the protector of the household, of women, and of childbirth. This is a mainstream historical fact, as Bes was a wildly popular deity, a sort of ancient Egyptian version of a garden gnome, but with a lot more sass and a lot more power. You see his image now, a grotesque, but strangely friendly, dwarf with a large head, a broad nose, and a fierce, toothy grin. He is often depicted wearing a lion's mane and a feather headdress, with his tongue sticking out in a playful but protective gesture. He is not a beautiful god, but he is a god you want on your side. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that unlike many other Egyptian gods who are shown in profile, Bes is always shown full frontal, a unique artistic choice that emphasizes his role as a direct and confrontational protector. He is not a distant, aloof deity. He is right there, facing you, ready to fight off any evil that might try to enter your home. Bes's job was to stand guard against malevolent spirits, scorpions, and snakes. He was particularly important to women in childbirth, as he was believed to frighten away the evil demons that could harm the mother or the baby. He would often be depicted on beds and headrests, a silent guardian in the night. The Egyptians would also carry small amulets of Bes for protection, a sort of pocket-sized divine bodyguard. His role was not cosmic, it was personal and intimate. He was the god you turned to for the small, everyday fears and anxieties of life. Historians still argue whether the origins of Bes lie in Egypt, or if he was a foreign deity who was later adopted into the pantheon. Was he a god of protection who came from a distant, unknown land, or was he a purely Egyptian invention? The fact is that his image and his cult were widespread throughout Egypt for thousands of years, a testament to his enduring popularity. He was a god of laughter and music, and it was believed that his jolly presence would frighten off the forces of evil. He was a god you could trust, a reassuring figure in a world that could often feel dangerous and unpredictable. You can almost hear his low, rumbling laugh now, a sound that is both a little bit scary and a little bit comforting. He is not a majestic god of the sun or a powerful god of the Nile. He is a god of the home, a god who looks after the small and the vulnerable. He is a reminder that the Egyptians believed that the divine was not just in the heavens, but also right there, in the very walls of your house. He is a beautiful, contradictory figure, a fearsome protector with a jolly, almost comedic demeanor. He is the guardian you want at your doorstep. From the fiercely protective dwarf god Bes, we now turn our attention to another fearsome yet gentle household protector. You find yourself standing by the banks of the Nile, and you feel a strange, powerful energy in the water. This is the realm of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess. This is a mainstream historical fact. Taweret was a very popular deity, a goddess of childbirth and fertility. and a powerful protector of women and children. She was often depicted as a bipedal hippopotamus with the legs of a lion and the back of a crocodile, and she almost always had a huge, pregnant belly. Her form is a little bit terrifying at first glance, but her purpose is entirely benevolent. The ancient Egyptians knew that the hippopotamus, while a source of danger in the wild, was also a symbol of fertility and motherhood. The hippopotamus gives birth in the water, a place of life and rebirth, and Taweret embodies this dual nature. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that her name, Taweret, means the Great One, a fitting title for a goddess who was believed to be the protector of the vulnerable and the giver of life. Her role was to ward off evil spirits, especially those that threatened pregnant women and newborn children. She was a god you wanted in your home, and you would often find amulets and statuettes of her in women's quarters. She was a silent guardian, a fierce protector with a gentle heart. Historians still argue whether Taweret's popularity came from the Egyptians' desire to appease the very real danger of hippos in the Nile, or if she was a purely symbolic deity who was meant to represent the fears and hopes of childbirth. Was she a way to placate a powerful animal? Or was she a mythological representation of the difficult and often dangerous process of giving birth? The ancient Egyptians had a very practical approach to their gods. They saw them as forces that could be either benevolent or malevolent, and their job was to appease the malevolent and enlist the benevolent. Taweret was one of the gods you sought out, a reassuring presence in a time of great stress and danger. She was a physical manifestation of a loving mother's protective instinct, a powerful and comforting figure in a world where childbirth was often a life-or-death situation. You feel a sense of profound calm from her, a presence that reminds you of a mother's watchful gaze. She is a goddess of both the wild and the domestic, a powerful creature who uses her immense strength to protect the small and the fragile. She is a beautiful, paradoxical deity, a hippo with a heart of gold, a reminder that the most fearsome creatures can also be the most gentle and protective. You've met Bes and Taweret, the fierce but gentle protectors of the home. Now, we turn to a god who embodies both the wild, dangerous forces of nature and the life-giving abundance of the Nile itself. You are now standing at the edge of the river, and you feel a profound sense of awe and a little bit of fear. This is the realm of Sobek, the crocodile god. This is a mainstream historical fact. Sobek was a powerful and widely worshipped deity, a god of fertility, but also a god of primal, untamed power. He was often depicted as a man with the head of a crocodile, or as a full crocodile resting on a bed. His worship was centered in the city of Crocodilopolis, where sacred crocodiles, believed to be the living embodiment of the god, were kept in temples and adorned with gold and jewels. This is a quirky or fringe tidbit. These crocodiles were fed and pampered like royalty, a rather unique way to venerate a god. You can almost see the massive, powerful creatures, their reptilian eyes watching you with an unnerving stillness. Sobek was a god you had to appease, a force you had to reckon with. He represented the unpredictable and often violent nature of the Nile itself. The river was a source of life, but it was also a place of sudden death, and the crocodile was the perfect symbol for this duality. But Sobek was not just a god of danger, he was also a god of fertility and creation. The Egyptians believed that his sweat created the Nile, a mythological explanation for the river's life-giving power. He was also a god of medicine and surgery, and his priests were known for their healing abilities. Historians still argue whether Sobek's dual nature, as both a malevolent and a benevolent force, was a reflection of the Egyptians' own complex relationship with the Nile. Was he a god of fear who was worshipped to keep him from harming you? Or was he a god of life who was worshipped for his fertility and abundance? The fact is that he was both, a perfect representation of the Egyptians' understanding of the cosmos as a place of both creation and destruction. You feel a sense of profound respect for this god. He is not a gentle, smiling deity. He is a raw, untamed force of nature. He is a god who demands respect and appeasement. He is the power of the flood, the fertility of the soil, and the hidden danger in the water. He is a reminder that the Egyptian gods were not just benevolent protectors, they were also powerful, and often terrifying, forces that had to be understood and respected. He is a god of contradictions, a fearsome creature with a life-giving purpose. You have encountered the strange and powerful Sobek, the crocodile god, a deity who perfectly embodies the contradictory nature of the Nile. Now, you're back on the sunboat with Ra, and you have a new perspective on his nightly journey. This isn't just a simple boat ride, it's a high-stakes, life-or-death mission that requires a dedicated crew. This is a mainstream historical fact, as the Egyptians had a detailed mythology about the gods who crewed the sunboat. You can see them now, standing ready to do battle with the forces of chaos. The crew is a fascinating mix of deities. There's Sia, the personification of divine knowledge, who guides Ra's boat with his immense wisdom. There's Hu, the god of the divine utterance, whose powerful words can create and command. There's also Heka, the god of magic, who protects the boat with his powerful spells. He's not just a god of magic, he is the very concept of magic itself, a force that the Egyptians believed permeated all of reality. This is a quirky or fringe tidbit. The Egyptians believed that magic wasn't just spells and rituals, but a fundamental part of the universe. It was a divine force that could be used for both good and evil, and it was a crucial part of a god's power. But the most important crew member is, of course, Set, the god of chaos, storms, and the desert. He stands at the prow of the boat, a powerful and fearsome figure, ready to do battle with the great serpent, Apep. This is the same god who murdered Osiris and tried to usurp the throne. He is the villain of our main story. But here, on the sunboat, he is the hero. He is the one who, with his immense power and chaotic nature, is able to fight off Apep, the embodiment of all chaos and destruction. It's a fascinating paradox, a reminder that the Egyptian gods were not simple figures of good and evil, but were complex and often contradictory. Historians still argue whether Set's role as the protector of Ra was a late addition to the myth, or if it was an original part of his mythology. Was his role as a villain a later theological development, a way to explain his chaotic nature, or was it a way to show that even the most chaotic forces can be put to good use? The fact is that this dual role made him a central figure in Egyptian mythology. He was a god of both destruction and protection, a force that was both feared and revered. You watch as the sunboat glides through the darkness, the crew working in perfect harmony, a testament to the order that governs the universe. They are a team of divine warriors, each with a specific role, all working together to ensure that the sun will rise again. They are a reminder that the world is a delicate balance, and that it takes the efforts of many, even the most chaotic, to keep it from falling back into the primordial nothingness. The sunboat glides through the darkness, and you feel the immense power of Heka, or magic, as it protects the vessel from the forces of chaos. The Egyptians didn't see magic as some sort of superstitious force, but as a fundamental part of the universe. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of Heka was a core element of their religion and daily life. It was a divine energy that could be used by gods and humans alike, a sort of cosmic power that could be harnessed for both good and evil. You now understand that the gods didn't just have magic, they were, in many cases, magic itself. The god Heka was a personification of this force, a deity who embodied the very concept of divine power. His name is a bit of a clever joke. It can be translated to mean activating the Ka, which is the Egyptian concept of a person's life force. So, in a way, Heka was the force that gave life to everything. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that even the spoken word was a form of Heka. The act of naming something or speaking a spell was believed to have a real, tangible effect on the world, a rather powerful concept that gave great importance to the priests and the scribes who knew the proper incantations. Heka was used for everything, from healing the sick and protecting the home to ensuring a good harvest and warding off evil spirits. It was a practical, everyday tool, woven into the fabric of their lives. You can almost see the priests and magicians of ancient Egypt, with their scrolls and their amulets, using this power to shape the world around them. Historians still argue whether the Egyptian belief in magic was a form of proto-science, a way for them to try and understand the natural world, or if it was a purely religious belief that they used to try and control the chaos of their lives. Was it a form of primitive medicine or a way to appease the gods? The fact is that their belief in Heka gave them a sense of control over a world that was often unpredictable and dangerous. The sunboat is now moving toward the sunrise, and you can feel the forces of Heka working to ensure a new day. Heka is not just a tool, it's a part of the cosmic order. It's the force that allows the gods to do what they do. It's the power that allows Ra to be reborn every morning, the power that allows Isis to bring her husband back to life, and the power that allows Horus to reclaim his rightful place on the throne. It's a reminder that the Egyptian universe was not just a place of physical laws, but a place of divine energy, a place where magic was real and powerful. You've felt the power of Heka, the magical force that permeates the universe. Now, you're back on the sunboat, gliding through the morning sky, and Ra, the great sun god, is looking out over the world he created. But how did he create it? We've talked about Atum, the first god, but the story of humanity's creation is a little more personal and, well, a little bit sad. This is a mainstream historical fact. The story of how Ra's tears became the first human beings. The story goes that Ra, in his loneliness and boredom, began to weep. You can almost feel the divine tears, warm and heavy with sorrow. They fall from the sky and land on the fertile earth of the Nile Valley. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptian word for tears and the word for people were the same or very similar. A clever little pun that cemented the connection between the creator and his creation. So, the first humans were born not from a grand, divine plan, but from a moment of profound sadness. They are, in a very real sense, the literal tears of a lonely god. The myth is a beautiful and poetic explanation for humanity's existence. It suggests that we are born from emotion, from a feeling of loneliness and a desire for companionship. It's a rather touching origin story, one that makes the relationship between the gods and humanity a lot more intimate. We are not just subjects, we are a divine family, born from a moment of divine melancholy. Historians still argue whether this myth was a later addition to the creation story, a way to explain the human condition, or if it was an original part of the pantheon. Was it a way to show that humans were inherently flawed, born from a moment of sadness and not a moment of joy? The fact is that this myth gives humanity a unique and powerful connection to the divine. We are not a separate creation, we are a part of the gods themselves. You are now in the world that was born from these tears. You feel a new sense of reverence for the land, for the Nile, and for the people who walk it. They are all a part of a divine story. A story that began with a tear. It's a reminder that even the most mundane parts of our world are imbued with a sense of the divine, a sense of magic and wonder. The sun is now high in the sky, a silent witness to a world that was born from a single divine tear. You've just heard the story of humanity's creation from the tears of Ra. But as you know from our earlier discussion, Ra's tears weren't the only time his eye had a dramatic journey. Now, you're going to witness the consequences of that fateful descent. We are returning to the myth of the Eye of Ra and its transformation into the lioness goddess, Sekhmet. This is a mainstream historical fact, the myth of Sekhmet's rampage and her near-total destruction of humanity. You feel the searing heat and the suffocating anger as the Eye of Ra descends. The sun god, Ra, is angry. Humanity has forgotten him, and their insolence has angered him to no end. He sends his eye to punish them, and it transforms into the terrifying lioness, Sekhmet, the powerful one. Her rage is not just a passing emotion, it is a force of nature, a fiery and unstoppable rampage. You can almost hear her roar, a sound that is both a challenge and a death knell. She begins her rampage, slaughtering humans in their thousands. You feel a sense of dread as you watch the land turn red with blood. Sekhmet, in her bloodlust, drinks the blood of her victims, and it only fuels her destructive fury. This is a quirky or fringe tidbit. Some scholars believe that the myth of Sekhmet's rampage was an etiological story, a way for the Egyptians to explain a devastating plague that might have swept through the land. The blood of her victims, a metaphor for the disease, was the very thing that drove her to continue her destruction. It's a rather gruesome but powerful way to rationalize the horror of a widespread illness. Ra, from his perch in the heavens, watches with a mix of satisfaction and horror. At first, he is pleased that humanity is getting its just deserts, but then he realizes that Sekhmet is out of control. She is not just punishing the disrespectful, she is on the verge of wiping out all of humanity, including the innocent. He has created a force of destruction that he cannot stop. This is a powerful and sobering thought. The gods, despite their immense power, could also make mistakes, and their anger could have devastating, unintended consequences. Historians still argue whether this myth was a theological lesson about the dangers of unchecked power or a historical explanation for a plague or famine. Was it a way to show that even the most benevolent gods could be dangerous? The fact is that this myth is a perfect example of the Egyptian understanding of their gods. They were not just forces of creation, but also forces of destruction. They were not to be taken lightly, and their anger was a force to be feared. The sun, a source of life, could also be a source of death. You've witnessed Sekhmet's terrifying rampage, the result of Ra's unchecked anger. The goddess of war is on the verge of annihilating all of humanity, and Ra, filled with a new kind of dread, must find a way to stop her. But how do you stop a goddess who is drunk on blood and vengeance? You can't fight her. She is an extension of Ra's own power. So, the gods, in a moment of brilliant and rather clever ingenuity, come up with a plan. This is a mainstream historical fact. The story of the beer-stained ruse that saved humanity. The gods gather and decide to get her drunk. But not with just any beer, they need a lot of it, and they need it to look like blood. So they gather a huge quantity of beer, 7,000 jars in all, and they mix it with red ochre, a reddish-brown earth pigment. The result is a liquid that looks exactly like a vast lake of blood. They then pour this mixture out onto the fields where Sekhmet is planning her next massacre. You watch as Sekhmet, her eyes wild with bloodlust, comes across the lake of red beer. She sees it and, thinking it's the blood of her victims, she begins to lap it up. She drinks and drinks, her thirst insatiable. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some versions of the myth, she drinks so much that she falls into a deep, drunken slumber and transforms back into the gentle, loving goddess Hathor. The bloodthirsty lioness has been tamed by a massive, divine hangover. She wakes up, her rage gone, and she is once again the goddess of joy and love. Ra, relieved, declares that from now on there will be an annual festival in Hathor's honor, where the people will drink a lot of red-colored beer in her honor, a celebration of the day humanity was saved from destruction. Historians still argue whether this myth was a way to explain a specific festival, or if it was an etiological story meant to rationalize the two very different natures of the goddess Hathor. Was she a single goddess with a dual nature, or were there two separate goddesses that were later merged into one? The fact is that this myth is a perfect example of the Egyptians' sense of humor and their ability to find a light-hearted solution to a cataclysmic problem. They turned a near annihilation into a reason to party, a rather charming and relatable thing to do. You feel a sense of relief, a collective sigh of the cosmos. The world has been saved by a simple trick and a whole lot of beer. It's a reminder that even in the most dire of circumstances, there is always hope. And sometimes, that hope comes in a very strange and unexpected form. The world has been saved from the wrath of Sekhmet, and you now feel a gentle shift in focus from the terrifying lioness to her more domesticated counterpart. We are now in the realm of the cat goddess, Bastet. This is a mainstream historical fact, the worship of Bastet as a goddess of fertility, protection, and the home. She was often depicted as a woman with the head of a domesticated cat, and her worship was centered in the city of Bubastis. You can almost feel her playful, gentle presence now. A stark contrast to the ferocity of Sekhmet. Bastet was a protector of the home and of women, and she was a very popular deity, a symbol of everything that was good and gentle in the world. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians domesticated the African wildcat, and they loved their cats so much that they mummified them and buried them in vast cemeteries dedicated to Bastet. They believed that by burying their beloved pets, they were ensuring that they would be with them in the afterlife. It's a rather sweet and touching detail that speaks to the deep connection between the Egyptians and their feline friends. Bastet's role was to protect the home from evil spirits, disease, and the forces of chaos. She was a silent guardian, a symbol of the comfort and security of a peaceful home. Historians still argue whether Bastet and Sekhmet were originally two separate goddesses who were later merged, or if they were always two sides of the same coin, a perfect representation of the duality of the cosmos. Was the gentle cat goddess and the ferocious lioness two aspects of the same powerful feline force? The fact is that this duality made her a fascinating and powerful figure, a goddess that people could turn to for both protection and a little bit of sass. You feel a sense of profound calm from her, a presence that reminds you of the quiet comfort of a cat purring in your lap. She is a goddess of both the wild and the domestic, a powerful creature who uses her strength to protect the small and the vulnerable. She is a reminder that the most fearsome creatures can also be the most gentle and protective. You can almost hear her soft purr now, a sound that is both a little bit scary and a little bit comforting. You have now met Bastet, the cat goddess, a deity of comfort and protection. We're going to move from the realm of the domestic to a powerful, cosmic symbol that is a central element of the Osiris myth. This is the Djed pillar. This is a mainstream historical fact, as the Djed pillar was one of the most important and enduring symbols in all of ancient Egypt. It was a symbol of stability and was often associated with the god Osiris. You can almost see it now. A stylized column with 4 horizontal bars, a representation of a human backbone. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Djed pillar was believed to represent the spine of Osiris, the king who was murdered and dismembered by his brother Set. The reassembly of the Djed pillar was an annual festival, a ritual meant to symbolize the resurrection of Osiris and the triumph of order over chaos. It was a powerful, physical representation of the central theme of the myth, a symbol that could be manipulated and celebrated in a way that the myth itself could not. The Djed pillar was a symbol of stability, and it was often used in Egyptian art to show that a pharaoh's rule was stable and eternal. It was a reassurance that the world would not fall back into chaos, that the forces of order, represented by Osiris and his son Horus, would always triumph. Historians still argue whether the Djed pillar was a purely mythological symbol or if it was a real object that was later imbued with divine meaning. Was it a representation of a tree or a simple column, or was it a stylized representation of a human spine from the very beginning? The fact is that the Djed pillar was a powerful symbol that was used for thousands of years, a testament to its enduring power. You feel a sense of stability and peace from it, a silent reassurance that even in the face of death and chaos, there is always hope for a new beginning. The Djed pillar has given you a sense of cosmic stability, a reassuring symbol of order and life triumphing over death. Now, you're going to encounter a much smaller, but equally powerful symbol of this same idea, the sacred scarab beetle. This is a mainstream historical fact, the worship of the scarab, or Khepri, as a god of rebirth and the cyclical journey of the sun. The ancient Egyptians saw this humble dung beetle as a physical manifestation of the sun god Ra in his morning form. You can almost see it now, a small beetle pushing a ball of dung across the ground. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that this ball of dung was a miniature sun, and the beetle's tireless work was a daily reenactment of the sun's journey across the sky. The dung beetle would also lay its eggs inside the ball, and when the eggs hatched, the young would emerge from the dung, a perfect representation of new life being born from what was seemingly nothing. It was a beautiful and powerful metaphor for resurrection and the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth. Khepri, the scarab god, was believed to roll the sun into the sky at dawn, and he was a symbol of hope and a new beginning. He was often depicted as a man with the head of a scarab, or as a full scarab beetle. He was a god of creation and was an important part of the mythology of the afterlife. The Egyptians would often place a scarab amulet over the heart of the deceased during mummification, a magical talisman meant to protect the heart from being judged in the Hall of Two Truths and to ensure that the soul would be reborn in the afterlife. The scarab was a perfect symbol for this, a creature that embodied the very concept of rebirth. Historians still argue whether the veneration of the scarab was a purely religious belief or if it was a form of sympathetic magic, a way for the Egyptians to try and harness the beetle's power for their own benefit. Was it a god they worshipped or a symbol they used? The fact is that the scarab was a central part of their religion for thousands of years, a testament to its enduring power. You feel a sense of profound hope from this small creature, a reminder that even in the most mundane parts of our world, there is a sense of the divine, a sense of magic and wonder. The scarab has given you a sense of eternal rebirth and the cyclical nature of the universe. Now, You find yourself at the foot of one of the most magnificent structures ever built by human hands, the pyramids. These aren't just tombs, they are a part of a much larger cosmic belief. This is a mainstream historical fact, the concept of the pyramids as stairways to the heavens. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaoh, upon death, did not simply die, he became a star, a companion of the sun god Ra, and the pyramid was a physical manifestation of this celestial journey. You can almost feel the immense power and sacredness of the structure now. The shape of the pyramid, with its sloping sides leading to a single point at the top, was a deliberate design. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the pyramid's shape was believed to represent the primordial mound of creation, the Benben mound, that rose from the chaotic waters of Nun, the pharaoh. By being buried inside the pyramid, was being placed at the very center of creation, a place where he could be reborn and ascend to the heavens. The pyramid was not just a burial chamber, it was a magical machine, a powerful device meant to ensure the pharaoh's immortality. The pyramid texts, a collection of spells and incantations inscribed on the walls of the inner chambers, were a sort of guidebook for the pharaoh's journey. They were meant to help the pharaoh navigate the dangers of the afterlife and to give him the magical knowledge he needed to become a star. Historians still argue whether the pyramid's shape was a purely religious symbol or if it was also a reflection of a solar cult, a way for the pharaoh to connect with the sun god. Was the pyramid a stairway to the stars or a symbol of the sun's power? The fact is that it was both, a perfect representation of the Egyptians' deep connection to the heavens. You feel a profound sense of awe as you stand before this monument. It is a testament to the Egyptians' unwavering belief in the afterlife and their desire to make the journey as successful as possible. It is a reminder that death was not an end, but a transition, and that the pyramids were a powerful, physical way to ensure that this transition was a successful one. The pyramid, a testament to the pharaoh's journey to the stars, is not the only symbol of creation and rebirth. You now turn your attention to a much smaller, but equally important, symbol, the Benben stone. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of the Benben stone as the sacred mound of creation that rose from the chaotic waters of Nun, this stone was the very first thing to exist, and it was the place where the sun god Atum first appeared. It was the physical manifestation of the beginning of all things. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Benben stone was believed to be a pyramidion, the very top of a pyramid, or the capstone of an obelisk. The pyramidion and the obelisk were both powerful symbols of the sun god, and they were believed to be a way for the pharaoh to connect with Ra and ascend to the heavens. The pyramidion and the obelisk were a microcosm of the entire creation story, a single, powerful symbol that contained the essence of everything. Historians still argue whether the Benben stone was a real, physical object that was lost to time or if it was a purely mythological concept. Was it a sacred stone that was venerated for its connection to creation, or was it a symbolic representation of the first moment of life? The fact is that it was a central part of the Egyptian religion for thousands of years. The Benben stone, a symbol of creation and a connection to the sun god, was a powerful and enduring part of the Egyptian cosmos. It was a reminder that even in the vastness of the universe, there was a single point of origin, a single moment of creation that gave life to everything. You feel a sense of profound wonder from this small, powerful symbol. A reminder that the beginning of everything was not a chaotic, random event, but a single, powerful, and deliberate act of creation. The Benben stone has given you a sense of cosmic origin. Now, we turn our attention to the ultimate goal of the pharaoh's journey, immortality. The ancient Egyptians believed that the pharaoh, upon death, did not simply die, he became a star, a companion of the sun god Ra. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of the pharaoh's immortality and his transformation into a divine being. The pharaoh was considered a living god on earth, but upon death, he ascended to a new, more powerful form. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that the pharaoh's immortality was not guaranteed. He had to be worthy, and he had to be buried in the right way, with the right spells and the right rituals. The pyramid texts, a collection of spells inscribed on the walls of the inner chambers of the pyramids, were a sort of guidebook for the pharaoh's journey to the stars. They were meant to help the pharaoh navigate the dangers of the afterlife and to give him the magical knowledge he needed to become a star. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh's immortality was a purely religious belief or if it was a political tool used to legitimize the pharaoh's rule. Was the myth of the pharaoh's immortality a way to ensure that the people would be loyal to the king, or was it a genuine belief about the nature of the cosmos? The fact is that it was a central part of the Egyptian religion for thousands of years. The pharaoh's journey to the stars was not a solitary one. He was a companion of the sun god Ra, and he helped Ra on his nightly journey through the underworld. He was a part of a divine family, a force of order and a protector of the cosmos. He was a reminder that even in death, a pharaoh's job was not over. He was a powerful and enduring part of the Egyptian cosmos, a testament to their unwavering belief in the afterlife and their desire to make the journey as successful as possible. You've now learned about the pharaoh's ultimate journey to immortality. But this journey, and the entire Egyptian cosmos, would be impossible without the most important force in all of Egypt, the sacred Nile. This is a mainstream historical fact. The central role of the Nile River as both a literal and mythological source of life, creation, and order. The Egyptians didn't just see the Nile as a river, they saw it as a god, a powerful force that gave life to everything. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that the Nile was a physical manifestation of the god Hapi, a plump, androgynous god of the flood. Hapi was not just a god of the water, but a god of fertility and abundance. He was the one who brought the life-giving silt to the land, ensuring a good harvest and a prosperous year. The Egyptians believed that the Nile's annual flooding was a divine miracle, a sacred event that was a physical manifestation of the god's love for humanity. Historians still argue whether the worship of the Nile as a god was an original belief or if it was a later syncretism with other deities. Was the Nile a god from the very beginning, or was it a natural force that was later personified as a deity? The fact is that the Nile was the heart and soul of the Egyptian religion for thousands of years. The Nile was a reminder that life was a cycle of death and rebirth. The river would recede, and the land would be barren. But then it would flood again, bringing new life and new hope. It was a perfect representation of the Egyptians' understanding of the cosmos as a place of both creation and destruction. It was a god you had to respect, a force you had to reckon with, but it was also a god you could trust, a force that would always, in the end, bring life. You feel a sense of profound reverence for this river, a silent, powerful force that gave life to an entire civilization. The sacred Nile has given you a sense of life, death, and rebirth. Now, you're going to experience the most important annual event in all of ancient Egypt, the annual flooding. This is a mainstream historical fact. The Aswan flood as a life-giving miracle. The Egyptians didn't see the flood as a natural phenomenon. They saw it as a divine act, a sacred event tied to the god Hapi, the plump androgynous god of the flood. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that the annual flood was caused by the tears of the goddess Isis, who wept for her lost husband Osiris. Her tears, they believed, filled the Nile and caused it to flood, bringing life to the land. This beautiful and poetic explanation cemented the connection between the death of a god and the life of a civilization. It was a reminder that even in a moment of great sorrow, there was a sense of new life and hope. Historians still argue whether this myth was a way to explain the unpredictable nature of the flood, or if it was a way to link the most important natural event to their most important myth cycle. Was it a way to make the Nile a part of the Horus Set myth, or was it a late addition to an already complex story? The fact is that it was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. The annual flood was a moment of profound joy and celebration. It was a time to thank the gods for their benevolence and to pray for a good harvest. It was a reminder that the world was a delicate balance, and that it took the love and tears of the gods to keep it in order. You feel a sense of profound reverence for this event, a reminder that the Egyptians, despite their complex pantheon, had a simple and beautiful core belief, that life would always triumph in the end. The annual flood has given you a sense of divine intervention in the natural world. Now, we're going to turn our attention to the ultimate guidebook for the afterlife, the Book of the Dead. This is a mainstream historical fact. The purpose of the spells and incantations in the Book of the Dead as a practical travel guide for the afterlife. It wasn't a book you read, It was a book you were buried with. A powerful, magical tool meant to help you navigate the dangers of the underworld. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Book of the Dead was not a single, standardized book. It was a collection of spells, incantations, and prayers that were customized for each individual. A person would hire a scribe to write down the spells they wanted, and they would be buried with them. It was a personal, magical toolkit for the journey to the afterlife. Historians still argue whether the spells in the Book of the Dead were meant to be spoken aloud, or if they were meant to be read by the gods in the afterlife. Were they a set of instructions or a set of magical commands? The fact is that the Book of the Dead was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. The Book of the Dead was a reflection of the Egyptians' deep belief in the power of words and magic. They believed that by having the right words and the right spells, you could overcome any obstacle, even death itself. It was a testament to their belief that the afterlife was not a place of random chance, but a place that could be navigated with the right knowledge and the right tools. You feel a sense of profound reassurance from this book, a reminder that even in the face of death, there was a sense of control and a sense of hope. You've now learned about the purpose of the Book of the Dead, but to understand the journey to the afterlife, you need to understand the different parts of the Egyptian soul. The Egyptians believed that the soul was not a single entity, but a collection of different parts that had to be preserved and protected in order to have a successful afterlife. This is a mainstream historical fact. The concept of the ka and the ba as two of the most important parts of the soul. The ka was your life force, your spiritual double. It was born at the same time as you, and it lived with you your entire life. Upon death, the ka would leave the body, but it needed a place to return to in order to survive. This is why the Egyptians mummified their dead, and why they would often place a statue of the deceased in the tomb. The statue was a physical home for the ka, a place where it could return to and be nourished. This is a quirky or fringe tidbit. The Egyptians believed that the ka needed to be fed and watered, and they would often leave offerings of food and drink in the tomb for the ka to consume. The ba, on the other hand, was your personality, your consciousness, your soul. It was depicted as a human-headed bird, and it was the part of you that was able to travel between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The ba was able to leave the tomb during the day and travel to the world of the living, but it had to return to the body at night in order to be safe. This is why the Egyptians mummified their dead, to ensure that the ba would have a safe place to return to. Historians still argue whether the ka and the ba were two separate entities or two different aspects of a single soul. Was the ka a life force and the ba a personality, or were they a unified whole? The fact is that their belief in these different parts of the soul gave them a unique and powerful understanding of life and death. You feel a new sense of reverence for the Egyptian view of the soul, a complex and beautiful understanding of what it means to be alive and what it means to die. It's a reminder that the Egyptians saw death not as an end, but as a journey, a transition to a new and more powerful form of existence. You've now learned about the ka and the ba, the different parts of the Egyptian soul. You have seen the gods, the myths, and the rituals that governed their lives. You are now at the end of our journey, a final journey through the interconnected web of gods, myths, and beliefs. You are in the field of reeds, a place of peace and eternal contentment. You can feel the calm presence of Osiris, the king of the dead, who rules this perfect land with wisdom and justice. You can feel the gentle love of Isis, the sorceress who brought him back to life. You can feel the quiet strength of Horus, the king of the living, who ensures that the world is in order. You can feel the raw power of Set, the god of chaos, who, despite his nature, is a necessary force that helps the sun rise every morning. This is a mainstream historical fact, the interconnectedness of all Egyptian beliefs. There was no single god, no single myth. It was all a part of a single, unified cosmos, a complex and beautiful tapestry of life, death, and rebirth. You can feel the threads of the story now, all woven together into a single, cohesive whole. The creation myth of Atum, the family drama of Osiris and Set, the daily journey of Ra's sunboat, the afterlife journey of the soul. It's all one story, one great, long, eternal narrative. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians had no single, authoritative sacred text. The myths and beliefs were passed down through generations. and they were often contradictory and inconsistent. This meant that the Egyptians were able to adapt their beliefs to new ideas and new challenges, a testament to their flexibility and their desire to make their religion a living, breathing thing. Historians still argue whether this lack of a single text was a weakness or a strength. Was it a sign of a fragmented religion, or was it a sign of a dynamic and adaptable one? The fact is that it was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. You feel a profound sense of peace now. You have seen the beginning of everything, and you have seen the end. You have seen the life and death of a god, and you have seen the journey of a soul. You are now a part of this story, a silent, knowing witness to one of the most beautiful and complex mythologies in human history. The sun is beginning its descent, and you feel the weight of a long, cosmic day settling in, but you are not alone. You are in the field of reeds, surrounded by the spirits of the worthy dead, and you are filled with a sense of peace. You have witnessed the great drama of the Egyptian gods and the journey of the human soul. You have seen the creation from the primordial waters of Nun, the family feud of Osiris and Set, and the triumph of order over chaos. You have learned that the gods were not perfect. They were flawed and they made mistakes, but they were also capable of great love and great compassion. You feel the presence of the gods now, not as distant, aloof deities, but as powerful forces that are still at work in the world. You can feel the raw power of the sun god Ra, the quiet wisdom of Thoth, the fierce love of Isis, and the wild, chaotic energy of Set. They are all a part of the universe, and they are all a part of you. A mainstream historical fact is the concept of eternal recurrence in Egyptian thought. The world was a cycle of death and rebirth, a cycle that was repeated every day with the sun's journey, every year with the Nile's flood, and every lifetime with the journey of the human soul. This was not a grim, repetitive cycle. It was a reassuring one. It was a promise that even in the face of death and destruction, there would always be a new beginning. You feel a sense of profound calm now. The sun is now a gentle orb, a soft and warm light that is beginning to fade. You can feel the day's journey coming to an end, and you are filled with a sense of peace. The world is in order, the cosmos is in balance, and you are now a part of it. The sun has set, and you are now in the duat, the underworld. But you are not afraid. You are a worthy soul, and you have the knowledge and the power to navigate this realm. You have your Book of the Dead, a magical guidebook for the journey. You feel the presence of Anubis, the jackal god, who guides you through the darkness. You are not alone. The underworld is not a place of fire and torment. It is a place of transition, a place where the soul is purified and prepared for the next stage of existence. It is a place of both danger and opportunity, a place where you will face your fears and overcome your doubts. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that the underworld was a mirror image of the world of the living, with its own rivers, mountains, and valleys. It was a place that was both familiar and otherworldly, a place that was a perfect representation of the journey to the afterlife. You feel a sense of profound trust in the system. The Egyptians believed that the journey to the afterlife was not a matter of luck. It was a matter of knowledge and preparation. If you had the right spells, the right rituals, and the right beliefs, you could ensure that your journey would be a successful one. It was a testament to their belief that the cosmos was a rational and orderly place, a place that could be understood and navigated with the right tools. Historians still argue whether the concept of the underworld was a later addition to the mythology, or if it was an original part of the beliefs. Was it a way to explain the darkness of the night? Or was it a theological explanation for the transition from life to death? The fact is that it was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. You are now a part of this journey, a silent, knowing witness to one of the most beautiful and complex mythologies in human history. You are now in the heart of the underworld, but you are not alone. You are a part of a procession of souls, all of you moving toward the same destination, the Hall of Two Truths. You have passed the judgment, but you have a new task now. You are in the realm of Osiris, the king of the dead, and you must now pay your respects to him. You are in a vast, subterranean temple, and you can see the god Osiris, seated on his throne, his face a serene, peaceful mask. He is a god of life, death, and resurrection, a god who embodies the entire cycle of existence. He is a god of hope, a god who reminds you that even in the face of death, there is always hope for a new beginning. You feel a sense of profound peace from him, a sense of calm and a sense of reassurance. A mainstream historical fact is that the Egyptians believed that Osiris was the king of the dead, a fair and just ruler who welcomed the worthy to his kingdom. He was a god you could trust, a god who would ensure that your afterlife would be a happy and peaceful one. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that in some myths, Osiris was also a god of vegetation, a god who was responsible for the fertility of the land. His death and resurrection were a metaphor for the death and rebirth of the crops, a perfect representation of the cyclical nature of life. Historians still argue whether Osiris was a historical figure who was later deified, or if he was a mythological god from the very beginning. Was he a king who was murdered and later became a god? Or was he a god who was created to explain the cycles of life and death? The fact is that he was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. You are now in his presence, a silent, knowing witness to one of the most powerful and enduring myths in human history. You have paid your respects to Osiris, the king of the dead, and you are now a part of a procession of souls, all of you moving toward the final destination, the field of reeds. But to get there, you must pass a series of magical trials and challenges. You have your Book of the Dead, a magical guidebook for the journey. You feel the presence of Thoth, the god of knowledge, who helps you navigate the treacherous rivers and the fiery lakes. You are not alone. The journey to the field of reeds is not a simple one. It is a journey of purification, a journey where you must prove that you are worthy of eternal life. You must recite the correct spells. You must answer the riddles of the demons, and you must overcome the obstacles that are placed in your path. This is a mainstream historical fact, the concept of the journey to the afterlife as a series of magical trials. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that if you failed to recite the correct spell, a demon would eat you, and you would be lost forever. It was a high-stakes, terrifying game of magical knowledge. You feel a sense of profound trust in the system. The Egyptians believed that the journey to the afterlife was not a matter of luck, it was a matter of knowledge and preparation. If you had the right words and the right spells, you could ensure that your journey would be a successful one. It was a testament to their belief that the cosmos was a rational and orderly place, a place that could be understood and navigated with the right tools. Historians still argue whether the trials and tribulations of the underworld were a way to scare people into living a good life, or if they were a literal belief about the dangers of the afterlife. The fact is that they were a central part of their religion for thousands of years. You are now in the final leg of your journey, and you are filled with a sense of hope and a sense of peace. You have overcome the dangers, you have proven your worth, and you are now ready for your reward. You have passed the final trials and tribulations of the underworld, and you are now standing at the entrance to the field of reeds. You feel a sense of profound peace, a sense of home. You are no longer a soul, you are a part of the cosmos, a part of the great cycle of life, death, and rebirth. You are in a place where the sun always shines, the crops are always abundant, and the people are always happy. You are in a place of eternal rest and eternal joy. A mainstream historical fact is the concept of the field of reeds as a perfect, idealized version of life on Earth. It was a place where you could spend eternity with your family and your friends, a place where you could do all the things you loved, but without any of the hardships. It was a place that was a testament to the Egyptians' deep love for life and their desire to make it last forever. A quirky or fringe tidbit is that the Egyptians believed that you would still have to work in the field of reeds, but it would be a pleasant, effortless kind of work. The shabtis, the small servant statues you were buried with, would do all the hard work for you, leaving you to enjoy a life of leisure. Historians still argue whether the concept of the field of reeds was a literal belief or a metaphorical one. Was it a real place that the souls of the worthy travelled to? Or was it a symbolic representation of a state of perfect contentment? The fact is that it was a central part of their religion for thousands of years. You feel a sense of profound gratitude now. You have been a silent, knowing witness to one of the most beautiful and complex mythologies in human history. You have seen the creation of the world, the life and death of a god, and the journey of a soul. You are now at the end of your journey, and you are filled with a sense of peace and a sense of home. The journey is now complete. You are in the field of reeds. Surrounded by the spirits of the worthy dead, you are filled with a sense of profound calm and a deep, abiding peace. The gods are now a part of your memory, a part of your understanding of the world. The myths are no longer just stories, they are a part of your very being. You have seen the life and death of a god, and you have seen the journey of a soul. You are now a part of this story, a silent, knowing witness to one of the most beautiful and complex mythologies in human history. The great solar journey is over, the myths have been explained, and the gods have shown you their world. The sun has set, and the world is now wrapped in a gentle darkness. The gods are at peace, and you are at peace. The great river of time continues to flow, but you are now a part of it, a part of the great, eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. You can close your eyes now. You can let the stories settle in your mind. The myths will not leave you. They will be there, in your dreams, a part of your subconscious, a part of your soul. You are safe now, in a place where the sun always shines, where the river always flows, and where the gods are always watching over you. You can sleep now. You are home. End of script. Sweet dreams.